Welcome to the Wedding Industry News, where each episode covers something old, something new, something borrowed, and some news. It's May 2024, and I'm your host, Aisha Garnett, owner of Sharia Moore Weddings and Event Planning, Master Certified Wedding Planner, and Certified Educator with the CWP Society, an industry membership for planners, venues, and pros. Let's jump right into our first segment. A former bride turned marketing manager for an online bridal community has a new way of getting those infamous RSVP responses back from wedding guests, and some feel that her tactic is a bit much. According to FoxNews.com, 39-year-old Nishma Mystery is holding wedding guests accountable for failing to return their RSVPs in a timely fashion. She's taking a proactive approach, and she's adding something additional to the stationery suite aside from the standard invitations to send to those wedding guests who fail to let the couple know whether or not they will be in attendance by the RSVP deadline date. She's created what she calls a missed RSVP card that simply reads, "We're sorry you can't make it to our wedding. Our RSVP deadline has passed, and you unfortunately did not respond. We would have loved you to attend, but final numbers have now been turned in, and your presence will be missed." Mystery came up with this idea after sharing her personal experience when planning her wedding in the early 2000s. She says she planned a large-scale wedding and found herself calling 550 of her wedding guests to follow up on their RSVPs after the deadline passed. Mystery says couples shouldn't have to take up time in doing this, so this card serves as an avenue to help eliminate this daunting task. She's received quite the backlash from online critics who called this approach harsh, tacky, and inconsiderate. Well, Mystery has similar sentiments when it comes to those wedding guests who don't respond in time to couples' recommended RSVP deadline date. Joining me to weigh in on this topic is Laurie Hartwell, founder and CEO of the CWP Society, and Krisy Thomas, Vice President of the CWP Society. Thanks for joining me today, ladies.
Hey, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hi, Aisha. I'm excited. This topic. Ooh.
Let's get into it. Now, this falls in line with uninviting a wedding guest. What do you think of this missed RSVP card idea? Do you think it's spot on, or do you think it's inappropriate?
You're not a wedding guest until you select, yes, I'm coming. Here is my meal selection. When you hit that yes, that means, okay, you're officially a wedding guest. You're just invited until then. So I don't think you're uninviting anyone if they didn't send the RSVP at all.
And I have a bigger problem with if someone RSVPs and then they don't show. That I have a bigger problem with. So yeah, I mean, I want to know when she wanted to send these out.
That's where my head went to, Laurie, because we know with USPS and mail and delivery, things get lost, things take a little bit longer. So if this card was sent out the day after the deadline, then yeah, I have some issues with it. Like, hold your horses. I put it in the mail. It's coming. Be a little patient here. Or maybe it was sent, a week after the deadline. At that point, you've had some time to get those final RSVPs in the mail. So I think that's where my question came from, is like Laurie said, when exactly was this sent out? Because I don't actually mind this either. That's just me.
Yeah. I was shocked to hear. I'm shocked to hear you two say that. I don't know why I thought you would think opposite.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing. Like sometimes, I mean, and what she said on the card was actually quite pleasant. But again, I wouldn't send something out of that nature until about a week before the wedding. That's when I would send something out. Like, you've had ample time to RSVP. It is clearly not going to happen for you. But here's what I know to be true. And just being in the wedding industry as long as I have, most people, if they have not RSVP, they're not coming. That is most of the time. So you can usually bank on that fact. At the same time, I'm not saying that this is my ideal method. Trust me, Aisha, that's not what I'm saying. My ideal method is a phone call. Hey, how are you? Now, you're inviting obviously she had to have invited thousands of people to this wedding if she had 550 that had not responded, and that's different. Nobody would want that. We would have to delegate the living daylights out of that situation and that task. But normal people have, I would say, maybe anywhere from 20 to 30 people that they may not have heard from. So this isn't going to be a weeks long ordeal for us. So giving someone a call after the deadline and saying kind of the same things like, hey, I hadn't received your RSVP. We would love for you to attend, but we've got to get these final headcounts into the catering company as well as the venue. Are you going to be attending or are you not going to be attending? Because we absolutely have to know by, today, no later than today. And if they're like, oh my gosh, I want to give someone the opportunity to go, are you telling me I didn't send that in? Oh my gosh, I cannot believe because we're human and we're going to make mistakes from time to time. And so giving people a little bit of grace there, I think is kind of wonderful. And giving that person a call to say, hey, I just want to give you one last shot. I think that's a better way of doing it. But if you haven't heard from them at all, that's problematic. And so I don't personally feel like there's a need for a card like this, but I also don't see that this should cause anybody great harm either. Where the problem is when someone RSVPs and then they don't show. So that means I've paid for their meal. We've paid, Krisy was talking to me earlier. She's like, that means that there's been a chair paid for, the charger, all the decor that goes with. It's a very expensive thing to throw a wedding, and some guests don't necessarily understand that, and that's when I'd be furious. But ahead of time, I'm not so mad.
Okay, I can get with that. And to your point, so much is factored around the final guest count when it comes to the planning process. And some wedding planners do offer tracking RSVPs as part of their planning package. I do so myself. Mm-hmm. Whether or not couples or wedding pros decide to take this approach, what other advice would you lend to wedding planners to share with their couples on ways to get those RSVPs back in time?
The first thing right off the bat is making sure that the date on the RSVP card is an accurate date. So the ideal date is anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks prior to the wedding day. If you are making that RSVP date too early, you are going to find that a lot less people are going to RSVP by that deadline because I've heard of where couples are like, I'm putting it 12 weeks out. I'm going to send my invitations out really stinking early, and the RSVP date is going to be 12 weeks beforehand. Well, 12 weeks, that's a really long time in a lot of people's lives, and they don't always know if they can make those plans that early on. So they're actually shooting themselves in the foot in those situations. So as a wedding planner, I would be making sure that I am recommending to my couples to make sure that they're putting an accurate RSVP deadline date on those RSVP cards. So that's step one, 3 to 4 weeks prior to the wedding day is when that's supposed to be out. Krisy probably has some ideas, and so maybe we can kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, that's exactly where my head went, because the reason why that is like that sweet spot is you typically need those final numbers for your venue, your rentals, and catering about that 2 weeks out mark. So having that buffer gives you time to do what Laurie mentioned, which is delegating, having for your partner call your people, I'll call my people, mom, you call these people, and actually hopping on the phone with these people so that way you do get an actual correct number. I've had couples try to do their deadline the day it's due for catering, and I'm like, this is way too late. We're not giving you enough time to be able to reach out to these people because unfortunately you're going to have this number. And it's so funny. One question I always get from my couples is there a better way to get these RSVPs where I'm going to not have to make so many phone calls? Is that online or paper? Is there one better than the other? And to be quite honest, what I have found in my years of also tracking RSVPs, there's not. You can make it as easy as possible for these people. And we're either providing them a link, which is just a click of a button, or we're giving them a pre-stamped envelope where all they have to do is sign it and put it in the mailbox. We're making it as easy as possible, but there's not any benefit between the other as far as like, I'm going to get more RSVPs back if I do it in the mail versus if I do it online. It's about the same. It's going to be about 20, 25 people that you just need to reach out to because they just simply forget.
It's
Yeah.
true. And I think the best thing to do maybe in this day and age is maybe give both options. Have it to where they can either mail it back. And if that's the case, if the couple's like, if I'm going to give an option, I don't want to make it a pre-stamped envelope. Well, that's perfectly fine. They don't have to. It's preferred. That's the proper etiquette, is to provide that. But if you're also giving them an option of maybe a card that's inserted in there that's just a QR code where they just take their phone out and they click and they can RSVP from there. They don't have to type in an actual address in the URL. Maybe that's going to make things a little bit simpler and a little faster, more productive and more efficient. That's perfectly fine. But giving both options, I think, is going to be your best bet. Why? Because some people still deal with paper and some people only deal with digital, and we don't know who is going to be who. We can't predict that. And so we have to make sure that we are thinking of both sides of that situation. So I think based off of kind of what Krisy and I are talking about, plus putting that accurate deadline is going to be key. Making sure that it's not like what Krisy said, on the day that you have to turn in all of your final counts, but a couple weeks before that. That's going to be very important.
Great advice. I wanted to add to this. Could you imagine getting something like that in the mail? Like, do you think, your guests would feel like, oh, wait a minute? Or would that empt them to call and say, hey, I did mean to RSVP. I'm so sorry. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I would probably feel bad that I didn't do the right thing. Like, oh my gosh, I failed. Now, there are going to be people out there that probably act more aggressively, like, I cannot even believe. So their ego gets kind of triggered. And so they get angry at the person who said, well, we didn't hear from you. So I just want you to know that we're not going to be able to lock in your chair since we didn't hear from you. It's not her fault. It's not the bride's fault that these people didn't RSVP. I, again, though, don't feel like it's even necessary. If someone doesn't RSVP, we need to assume they're not coming, but not so much of an assumption where we don't at least check in. I would have rathered her call, but she's got 550 people. What a pain in the butt. No wonder that was like in her heart painful. That's too many people. I don't know if I am close enough with 550 people, much less she probably had at least double that, actually invited. I just can't. So to me, Aisha, kind of going back, there's a couple of different ways I want to answer this. Number one, weddings are between two people, and it's the most intimate moment two people can share, where they are literally vowing their lives to one another. So who should go to those types of events? Because that is quite an event to watch two people be so vulnerable and dedicate their entire lives to one another. They're supposed to be on the smaller scale, not the thousands of people. This is not a concert that we are putting on, right? This is not a play, this is a private, intimate event. So yes, I understand having like 150, 200 people in total. But that's even sometimes a lot of people. So what I want couples to understand and planners to help their couples understand is only invite people that you actually know, that you've talked to recently, that you love and that you care for. And when you narrow it down to those people, those beautiful, wonderful friends and family in our lives, you are going to have less people that ignore your RSVP. And if they thought that they sent in the RSVP and you have to call a few people or a dozen people, it's not going to be the end of the world. So we need to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in the position of having to call hundreds of people to find out where they are and what they're doing. So I think that was probably mistake number one, but it was most likely a cultural situation. So in some cultures, the guest count is just absolutely enormous. And in that case, for her culture, for the way she decided to deal with it, maybe that card was the best option for her. I don't think it's appropriate for all weddings and to make it a blanket, piece of advice, or to be put into proper etiquette. That's definitely not what I'm suggesting. I'm just not overly offended by the whole thing. You want to see me become offended? I will be offended if you RSVP and you tell me you're going to do something, then you don't show after I paid money. Now I'm upset. So yeah, I think that's the difference for me. But Krisy, if you got this in the mail, what would you think?
I would be disappointed in myself. I wouldn't be upset at the couple. I'd be like, oh gosh, I cannot believe you did this. Like, I would be mad at myself for that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I had a wedding guest for my own personal wedding who was like, she was a bridesmaid in a way that I planned. And she pulled me aside on the wedding day and she said, I showed up to your wedding and I did not RSVP and I want to apologize. And I was like, girl, that was 7 years ago. What made you think of that? And she said, I'm planning my wedding now. And I'm just thinking all this money that's gone into it. I'm like, Krisy paid for my plate and my chair. And she's like, I feel so embarrassed. And I was like, well, I didn't realize that. Clearly we must have had a backup plan for random people who showed up. But I was like, I didn't know. So it makes me tickled that it was like, this has been eating her up.
Oh, that is so sweet though. I love that. But people, to go to your point though, there are so many people don't even realize the importance of that RSVP until they're in a position where they need an RSVP back. And so I think this bride's mission was more along the lines to start educating the masses of please RSVP. And if you do RSVP, actually do what you said you were going to do on the RSVP. Either don't show or show, but pick one and stick to it, right? I think that was mostly her point here. She's frustrated. I understand her frustration. There's better ways to go about it, but her idea wasn't the worst way I've ever heard of. I've heard of worse.
Got it. And I agree with you both. And I can understand the bride. I don't think I would have called 550 people.
No.
What? I don't even know that many people.
No, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie and Krisy, for joining me today and weighing in on this topic. I appreciate
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Now, switching gears to something borrowed. In this segment, we feature information from an alternate source that sparked my interest, and I'd like to share it with you. According to KARE 11 News in Isanti, Minnesota, one local venue closes abruptly, leaving couples with absolutely no warning and no answers to their questions about what they plan to do for the upcoming scheduled weddings. The Circle B wedding and events venue sent its couples and clients an email announcement stating that it would be closing effective immediately and that it would no longer be able to keep its doors open due to the state of the current economy, the competition from new venues in the market, and the increasing costs that it's had to face. Therefore, management has decided to shut down the historic venue. The email goes on to say that they wouldn't be able to accommodate any upcoming weddings or special events, and they are truly sorry. The email ends with, quote, nobody is available to take calls or emails. Of course, this devastating news sent couples and clients into panic mode, especially those who have weddings in as little as a couple of weeks from the announcement. One bride took to TikTok in tears, asking for help, and said that she booked the venue in April of 2023 and paid Circle B $11,500, and she is now looking for another venue in the area with just a couple of weeks before her wedding date. Many couples were in limbo after this news, and they reached out to the venue. They learned that the website had been taken down, along with the social media pages. The property is now listed for sale. The current owners also own and manage other venues in the area, and they currently have a pending lawsuit in Washington County for a different property. KARE 11 News tried multiple times to reach the venue and had no luck. Although the couples were hit with that disappointing news, many local venue owners in the Isanti area offered up their locations to those couples who had weddings this month for free, and they were offering a major discount to those couples with future wedding dates. Joining me again to weigh in on this topic is my favorite, Laurie Hartwell, founder and CEO of the CWP Society. And again, another favorite, Krisy Thomas, Vice President of the CWP Society. Welcome back, ladies. It's been a long time.
It's been so long. I missed you.
No, don't ever go away that long again.
Okay.
Now, I'm seeing a lot of stories where venues are abruptly closing, leaving couples in the dark about their wedding day. I can't help but to pose the question on whether or not venues truly bounced back from the pandemic. What are your thoughts on this story?
I don't know if it's a pandemic problem. I honestly think it's a management problem. When you do not manage your businesses correctly, this is going to happen. This is a story that has been repeated so many times in the past. And Aisha, I am hearing a lot of them lately too. But I don't know that it is a pandemic issue, because if it were, and I'm just kind of throwing this out there, we had so many venues that were being booked and double booked and triple booked, and they were getting a lot of business. Now, smart people would know, okay, this is not going to be like this forever. Okay, it's going to go back to normal. So if they had in their minds that they were going to do a business plan based off of doing X amount of weddings, like so many weddings, the abnormal amount that happened shortly after the pandemic, after things started opening back up, then that was poor management. That was not thinking smart. So I really don't know if it is a pandemic problem, if we can blame it on that.
Those are my thoughts too. I think, like you said, Laurie, this is a management running a business problem, because I've had plenty of people, venues where it's like, this is going to be our last year due to, let's say, health issues or family concerns or moving locations, these privately owned venues, but they're good people and they're good business owners, and they finish their season out. They
Yes.
Contracts. That's where my issue is with these situations, where it's abrupt, no refunds, no contact, and you're left with everyone scrambling. That makes me sick. That you're not a good person with that aspect of it. Not just a good business owner, but you're clearly not a good person either.
When we in the wedding industry make commitments, Aisha, we have an obligation, especially contracts are involved here. Contracts had to have been involved. That means you are making not only a verbal agreement, you're making a contractual agreement. Finish that out. Fine. Don't take any new weddings. Okay. Don't take one more new wedding. That's perfectly okay. You had to change gears for whatever reason, like some of the reasons Krisy just gave. Fine. We totally understand. But how you can do this to a couple weeks before their big day is beyond anything that I can actually comprehend. I can't comprehend it. So let me tell you, like, if something happened in my world, let's say I have a wedding in a couple of weeks and a major catastrophe has happened, and I know that I'm not going to be able to fulfill that obligation. I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I will move heaven and earth to find that couple an alternative. I am not going to leave anyone, just hanging and misplaced. I can't do that morally and ethically. So how any company would feel okay with it or not okay with it, but they're doing it anyway, is beyond any kind of rational reasoning that I can actually think of. It blows my mind.
I agree with you both. I know when I see these stories, I feel like too, the venue owner, they're doing this to multiple couples,
right,
multiple clients, mid-year, beginning of the year. Like, it is ridiculous how many stories I've seen similar to this.
Right.
And I feel like you both said, you have to already know that your business is in hot water.
Yes.
Okay, let's take some different approaches to how we handle this. The venue owners, they clearly want to help. They've reached out. So connect with them. That goes back to a lot of what you mentioned, Laurie, to the CWP Society, is building those relationships.
Yeah.
Lean on your fellow wedding pros. Lean on your fellow wedding vendors to help you out when you're in hot water. You just never know, even though they have a bad bone in their body, they don't know how to handle this situation, but there are good people. You can refer them to, other vendors to help you out.
Set them up. So if I was that venue owner, I would have been calling other venues in the area and saying, this is our situation. Do you have this date and this date and this date and this date available? I want to make sure that I'm giving the couples that we're not going to be able to, that I can't help, I need to give them some alternatives. And would you be willing to like take some of the money that they put down and apply it towards like I would have literally moved heaven and earth. It is their responsibility. Now, let's say that they didn't have any other venues that they could. Now, sounds to me like you said that they own other venues in the area. So like, I would have made other arrangements, but whatever. I really think even leaning on your local wedding professionals, like if you're short staffed, contact some of the photographers and wedding planners and catering companies that you have worked with in the past and see if they can help your venue out to just fulfill the existing contracts that you currently have with staffing. Because I can tell you that wedding planners would come out of the woodwork to help a venue to not abandon a couple. Period. The end. Like we will do whatever it takes to make sure that that doesn't happen. But the fact that they just send out this email and it's just out of the blue. And by the way, they had to have known well in advance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This isn't something that just popped up overnight. Oh gosh, we need to close our doors. This is usually, there are some steps that have been in play of like, we're struggling here. There's moments that lead up to this. So this wasn't an overnight thing.
Agreed.
Which just makes it so even more frustrating.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And to add to that, I know on one of our calls earlier today, the both of you mentioned that we're in this business to serve.
Yes.
And if you don't have that in mind when situations like this come up, what are you in this business for?
And and this is a great example of what happens to people who do not serve, who do not have that heart of service. Their business is going to fail. And I hate to say that, but it's not going to do quite so well. And we are in the hospitality industry, the end. Hospitality means to serve others, to be in service of. And if you are running your business in such a way that it is self-serving only, then these are going to be some of the big problems that are going to arise, and your reputation is going to be corroded. So we need to make sure that we are avoiding these kinds of situations at all costs and making sure that we're always having the right intentions when running our businesses, especially when it's going to affect someone else's lives.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know a lot of couples and wedding professionals don't think about adding wedding insurance to their list, but in cases like this, how important would the two of you say it is to ensure that our couples have wedding insurance?
I mean, it's so important. I think it's so important, Laurie, correct me if I'm wrong, because we provide contract templates. Did we mention that the importance of wedding insurance? As wedding planners, it's our job to educate these couples. This is a situation that I would bring up during that education piece of, have you guys got your wedding day insurance? Here's a reason why I suggested I don't want us to ever be in this situation. We've got a great venue, great venue owners, but in case something like this were to happen, let's get that insurance to protect us. That's literally what it's made for, to protect this wedding.
Yeah, it's 100%. Every single couple needs to be considering getting their wedding insurance, because you can't predict the future and you'll never know what happens. I mean, think about it, Aisha, the last time the last podcast that you recorded last month was about that photographer who had his camera and all of his SD cards in the back, and his car was vandalized and all of those items were stolen. Well, insurance isn't going to ever bring back those photographs, right? But insurance can at least make that financially right. Yeah. And so making sure that you have some sort of recourse and some way of making these types of situations that you can't predict right is going to help kind of ease that pain just a little bit.
I totally agree with you both. Thank you so much for joining me again and weighing in on this insight and story.
All right. Thanks, Aisha.
Next up is our old and new segment. This is where I'll be discussing a few of the older trends we are familiar with and sharing insight on other options to share with your couples. In this case, this trend is making its mark and it's here to stay. Now, as wedding professionals, we all know about the traditional formalities on wedding day, which include the ceremony, cocktail hour, and reception, with the reception more than likely ending with the last dance and the grand exit of the couple as we see them off to the start of their happily ever after. While the formal departure is still preferred by couples, many are taking advantage and they are giving guests an extension to the wedding celebration. Although this has been done in the past a number of times, I'm starting to see more couples make the definite decision to incorporate after parties into the timeline, giving their wedding guests another elevated experience. While this could seem like another expense, and it is, there are some benefits to this addition. These after parties provide the couple with the opportunity to enjoy more time with their loved ones. There can even be another wardrobe change to fit the vibe. Then there's the overall element of being able to have a great time on their wedding night. These after parties set the tone for the couples to dance the night away with the option to have a completely different atmosphere at the same venue if they choose. Some couples even opt for a different venue, ranging from private yachts to a more intimate space within the guest hotel or an upscale nightclub or bar. There's music, drinks, maybe a late night snack option, lighting, a unique lounge space, and definitely a dance floor, and all the aesthetics that leave your guests knowing that this is the party after the party. Now, although this is typically after hours, you want to encourage your couples to welcome all their wedding guests. In addition, making sure your couples consider the guest count, budget, and if they are opting for a different location, the distance in travel and time from the main venue to the next. Either way, be sure to make sure it makes sense for the couple and the guests, and always ensure that your couple factors in all safety measures for themselves and their guests. If your couple chooses to go this route, be sure to help them make it an after party to remember. Help them cap off the best day of their lives, knowing that they've just attended the party of the year. Wedding pros, as we bring this month's episode to a close, I'd like to leave you with an inspirational quote to keep you all encouraged in this demanding wedding industry. It's a quote by Phil Jackson, an American former professional basketball player, coach, and executive. It reads, "The strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team." Wedding pros, when we lean on each other, we are collectively bound to find our strength in navigating this industry. That wraps up our May 2024 wedding industry news. As always, we appreciate you for joining us, whether you are listening via a streaming platform or tuned in on our YouTube channel. We look forward to you joining us here next month on the Wedding Pro Podcast.